Godrick the Grafted. He is one of the more interesting characters in the game because he's pretty important to the story, but also seems to have that atmosphere where he's like not important. When you really think about it, he really is one of the big major keystones of the story in any way you can think about it. Whenever it comes to the Tarnished story, that he's one of the first major bosses to ever be in the Elden Ring in terms of your story, like, oh, you're gonna have to fight him at Stormveil Castle, or just in terms of the story that he somehow has a connection to Godwyn and Godrick, or not Godrick, Godfrey. It's just like, huh, it makes you really think, like, is Godrick character something? I think we're missing key components of his character, or we're just overlooking him. But one thing we're not overlooking is that Godrick has qualities and traits that we should not follow in life. Godrick has many different qualities, as I said, that just don't align with anything you could do. And of course, some of them can some of them can, be used in more positive and good ways. But the way Godrick does it is very, very, very negative in any way possible. And we're going to talk about that right now. As always, we're going to start with who Godrick is. Godrick the Grafted is one of the first major bosses you fight against in the Elden Ring game. But also, he's pretty much important to the story because right when you come out of the whole like tutorial area and you walk out and you meet White Mask Vari, he's one of the first characters you actually learn about. You hear about Godrick the Grafted, Godrick this, Godrick that, everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're exploring Limgrave and you go talk to Ken of Height, you learn about Godrick. It doesn't matter if you go to Outside Storm with Stormfront Gate. I think that's what the grace is called. Stormfront Great? What the hell? Stormfront Gate. There you go. And you go to the Sword Monument, you learn about Godrick and Melania. It's just like, he's one of the biggest characters that you will learn about early on. And it's supposed to be like that because he's one of the first major bosses you're supposed to fight. But there's something off about him. People talk about him as a demigod, but they like bashing him so much all the time. Bash. Ken of Height, we hear stories about Melania beating him. We hear about him running away from Radon, and we hear about how Vari talks about him. We hear about Sir Gideon Ofnir talks about him. So it's just a bunch of just random comments about a demigod. Right? We rarely ever hear that about a demigod. And if it is about a demigod, it's never questioning their strength or power. It's more questioning about what that person is actually doing. A good example is Mohg. Mohg is the Lord of Blood, and a lot of people are just like, oh, Lord of Blood. Oh, he's kind of crazy. All the blade fingers, Justified. 100% justified when it comes to Mohg. But no one really ever questions his power. They just call him insane or something like that. But when it comes to Godrick, they question, oh, is his legitimate, like his bloodline legitimate? Is he actually a demigod? Is he all this? But he is not exactly a demigod, but he has he has like divinity blood in him. His blood is very diluted. You learn this later on through Enya, I think her name is, the finger reader at the Round Table Hold. But for lack of better words, he's the weakest of all the demigods. And to compensate for that, he grafts limbs on them. And from what I know, most of these limbs are actually from Tarnish. So many of the Tarnish actually get grafted by Godrick and his his people, whoever do the grafting. But basically, he grafts these limbs onto his body, and one of these limbs, which I'm pretty sure if you played Elden Ring before, Elden Ring's been out for a while, is actually a dragon in it, which is honestly pretty cool. Although when you really think about it, like his ancestors, if he is connected to Godwyn and stuff like that, technically he grafted the wrong dragon head on him. Not the right one, but that's a little bit for a different story. But deep down, we all know that he's a coward, insecure, and just simply desperate. The biggest thing you can choose from this is that his character overall, how people view him, and then when you fight him, he's always talking about kneeling, commanding thee, and all that stuff. You don't have it's not like Radon or anyone else. Like, you don't hear that type of stuff from someone who actually has the strength to do so. But when you see his story, you realize that the truth is that he is no king, no lord, no true demigod like he proclaims, but he's more of a small interpretation of what actually he wanted to be. He's a coward. He's a warning to us to not follow in his ways. He's a warning to us that he is not deserving of what anything, like, he's not deserving of anything he is proclaimed to, which means that just relates back to my Godfrey Elden Ring lesson video, that strength is earned. He has not earned any of that. Another thing that adds on to this, which I'm gonna add this piece of evidence here, and I'm gonna refer back to it when I need to, is actually that he's escaped the capital with the women and children using a mimic spell. It was just insane. I really don't know how that really happened. I'm pretty sure from what I know, from the lore story, I'm pretty sure he escaped the capital with the mimic spell and among women and children. I think Kenneth Haidt said that, but I'm not too sure. But it's crazy. Like, when you really think about it, he really is the biggest coward out there. But that's who Godrick is. Ladies and gents, I can't stress enough that rogue energy is really, really good. And also, like in the name implies, it gives you a sense of energy, especially when you're gaming. And I said this time and time before, Night Rain, Elden Ring Night Rain, it's about to come out. Highly recommend to get you a tub of rogue energy to be your sidekick and your companion when y'all are getting beat by these bosses, because I already know I am. So highly recommend you get 5% off by using my code, just like it is on screen now, and everything else will be self-explanatory. When you taste that, it'll be straight energy and everything you can imagine, especially when defeating those bosses in Elden Ring. But now we're going to go into the next category, which is lessons to avoid. This is going to talk about Godrick's mindset. And this leads to many different qualities and traits that you should not have, but also it could be interpreted in many different ways. So we're going to talk about it as we go. But the first one I have on my notes here is that desperation dresses as power, and that's really is. I think Godrick is the most desperate person in Elden Ring. And desperate, there's different forms of desperate. Obviously, desperate, like how Melania was fighting Radahn, and she wanted to fulfill the vow. If you played the DLC, you know what I'm talking about. But she wanted to fulfill the vow, and she gave up her pride as a swordsman and a warrior to match Radahn by releasing the Scarlet Rot. That's not the desperate I'm talking about. Melania being desperate is completely different from Godrick's desperate. And he dresses the desperation as power. And everyone around him knows this. But obviously no one's strong enough, and whoever is strong enough just simply doesn't care to go after him. The only person that really cares to actually go after him is us. But let's talk about how Godrick isn't strong, he steals strength. And that's what it is too. Like, you never see him go on no training arc like, oh, I need to improve my skill set, or study like how the Royal Lucarians do, and like they study his magic or something like that, or things like just different from everyone else, right? He doesn't go on his training arc. He doesn't go on his, Goku hibernation chamber. Nah, he literally chops people's limbs off, put it on themselves, and I'm pretty sure he's a descendant of like the royal family and like Marika, so he has like the basically, what is the shaman like blood and body to like meld things together, and his skin and stuff like that, which is really disgusting process when you really think about it. But yeah, he grafts people on them and he steals their strength. It's basically like plagiarism. I watched an anime one time where this guy had the ability to plagiarize. I think it was a basketball anime, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he was able to steal like people's abilities and they can't use them no more. Very similar to Godrick grafting. Godrick basically just steals powers from other people and grafts it on himself and then calls it his own power. And when you really think about it, like, he's the weakest because he just steals power, yet when the power he steals, he never really truly refines it or like actually try to make it his own. He just kind of steals it and then goes to the next person to steal, which is crazy when you really think about it. But I have on here, which comes from also from the mindset of Sir Onzabach, which is real power comes from mastery, not shortcuts. 100% true. Like, that's the biggest difference. And when you talk about in real life, in business or life, grasping at quick fixes, for example, taking shortcuts. Obviously, some shortcuts are going to be very acceptable depending on the situation. But when I mean by shortcuts, I mean by cutting corners, copying, stealing, faking. All this stuff leads to just straight disaster and not long-lasting success. And obviously, it comes down to your reputation. I think reputation you shouldn't care about it too much. But there's a difference between a reputation that are like, hey, you made a few mistakes, or hey, you like legit did some crazy things. For example, in my field, when it comes to content creating about business and stuff like that, I actually try to talk about my own businesses. I try to talk about how to improve your business, and I have business development 101. But you also have people not in my field, but you have people that's like gives the bad image of people like me who actually try to teach business without a paycheck or a paywall. I don't have no course. But basically, you have all these like alpha males and these like fake gurus selling you the dream. And that's what it is, selling you the dream. And that just goes to show that desperation can be hide in many different forms. And Godrick is a good example of that. And you know, when people like find that in real life, they find themselves in a weird category where everyone knows, and you know, eventually they fall. Everyone else is like just like looking at them. It's like, yeah, you don't deserve of that. You truly are a monster when you really look at it. It doesn't matter what side you look at, the inside, the outside. Doesn't matter what coin you flip. You are truly a monster to prey on innocents and people who have nothing to do against you, and like you sell these false promises of power and stuff like that. But the second one I have here for Godrick's mindset is insecurity. Pretty self-explanatory. Insecurity. Like, he grafts a dragon to match your measure, but I would assume that he was already going to graft the dragon on himself. Like, when he already had the dragon before us, so he was planning to graft that dragon onto himself already, and for many reasons like we can think of, and we obviously have to imply it and infer it, but honestly, when you really think about it, it would be like to impress and to look stronger than what he actually is. And even when he did graft the dragon, it really didn't even matter to begin with. But it also begs the question is, I don't know if this is going to be a lore question or anything like that, but it begs the question, like, if you push the grafting process to the extreme, which I think Godrick was doing, but he was on the borderline of like almost pushing it to the extreme. I don't know how far grafting goes. We actually learn very little of the grafting process rather than what it is. Like, we know what it is, but we don't actually know what it is at the same time, unless that's part of the lore I missed. But I really wonder if the more you graft, the less you become human. And I guess it does apply to Godrick to some degree, because that's what I have in my notes. But when I really think about it, it can swing both ways. But how I see that, he became less human. Like, can you really look at him and be like, oh yeah, that's a human? Like, no, I guess. But you also could talk about the other side where he was more human because he was cowardly and insecure and all those other stuff, which are human traits. So it really just depends. I guess physically he was not a human. He was like a monstrosity, a freaking Frankenstein. So that really is, you know, overcompensating and insecurity. But right here, I also have on my notes is that if you keep adding more without building up your core, you will lose yourself, which is 100% true. And then another mindset tip I have about the insecurity is just to build skills, build character, not image. And obviously don't leech off whatever is remaining. I'm pretty sure my children will have to face this problem later on. But, you know, when you have like a record or some type of legacy and building of some type of history before where success was a part of that history, family history especially, it's kind of hard for the descendants to like push past that limit. But there are times where you can become more than what your family image was. And Godrick finds himself in that trap where he's so addicted to the golden lineage and it's the ideas and the image of the golden lineage that we never even know who Godrick was before that, or if there was even a Godrick that was not Godrick the Golden or Godrick the Grafted. So very, very interesting to think about. But I highly recommend to build your own character and build skills and do your own thing. When you do your own thing, you find yourself and you build character, and you don't fall into that whole family legacy trap. Obviously, we're gonna talk about the next category when it comes to his mindset, which is his coward. He's a coward. His cowardice. Godrick hides behind his title. He skipped the capital with the mimic's veil. He runs away and hide behind walls and behind these soldiers, and even runs away from Radon. Radon was shooting meteors at his castle. I'm pretty sure you look at the architecture of this castle, you can see that he got shot by a bunch of meteors, which is crazy. I can't imagine. I'm pretty sure. Honestly, I'm very surprised that he didn't Radon just didn't they had the whole castle and just whoop and threw it. But I'm pretty sure he had many different reasons, and I'm pretty sure one of the main reasons that it was Stormvale Castle. It was under Godfrey for a time, so I'm pretty sure he didn't want to do all that. But still, I'm surprised Godric did not do that. He didn't just pick up the freaking castle and then just launched it, because he did hold the stars in its place. So I'm pretty sure a castle is light work for him. But let's get back on point with Godric. That yeah, he ran away and he even insulted Melania, got defeated. I'm pretty sure it was pretty easy too. And then he proceeds to to like beg for forgiveness, and how Kenneth Sight says it, like I think liquor boot or something like that. So that's crazy, like really crazy when you think about it. So he's the biggest coward possible, and that's one of his defining traits of his character. So pretty self-explanatory to avoid this. The emotional lesson I have here is to be honest about your fears and don't let them shape your identity. Pretty self-explanatory, you know. And cowardice can spawn in many different forms, from anger, begging, controlling others, and just a fear of, many different fears, whether that fear be failure or anything like that. So remember to be honest about your fears, and you usually won't run into any type of cowardice. And if you do, cowardice is oftentimes can be used to your own advantage. But there's a difference between being cowarded, like having cowarded, there's a difference between having cowardice traits to like whatever it may be, whether that be combat or something like that. If you're doing mixed martial arts, so you're in this UFC fight, you're doing MMA or whatever it is, then, or like, you're being more strategic about how you're like being cautious and strategic, or whatever that may be in terms of business or anything like that, or school too. There's a difference between that and like cowardice, like how Godric does it. So try to avoid the whole cowardice how Godric did it. Another thing is that what I have here is that he was inflicting pain to not only steal power from others and still basically ruin other people's lives, but also to feel strong. Godric basically grasps people, and these people are around him suffer. And that's no way to live a life, no matter how bad or evil it is. Even the most evil people in Elden Ring don't do that. And the reason why they don't do that is because they don't need to. But when you inflict pain on others, it hurts people. Self-explanatory. You're like, oh my god, it hurts people. But you'll be surprised that when you really think about the bigger picture of Godric, he has no one around him. Because all those people are getting hurt, either dead already from Godric or anything like that. He doesn't even have his knights from the capital in his castle. He doesn't have them. So that just goes to show that how much pain he has inflicted on others. And, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some type of rebellion, like how with I forgot what the Black Knights from the DLC, the Black Knights under Mesmer tried to rebelled against them. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened with Godric. So it just goes to show that toxic leaders will drain and destroy everything, and destroy whatever you're associated with, and you have to be very, very beware of these toxic leaders. Remember, that also goes to you when it comes to business. Remember that you do not want to follow this lead into leadership like how Godric did it. But also, don't build your life by stepping on others. That's not strength. That's weakness, pretending to have a sense of dominance. Just pretending to have a sense of dominance. So remember that, remember that, remember that. Another thing I have for his mindset is that he's clinging to power instead of growing. Like, Godric, by the time we meet him, he's so desperate that his desperation just really is just clinging to all the power he has. Like, he even has the kite and cell swords in the Limgrave because he's losing power. He doesn't have the power to hold Limgrave no more. And even his soldiers are low-key they're in strategic positions, but they're also you rarely ever see them. And when you see them, you see them a lot of time, but when you get farther away from Stormveil, you see them less, way less. And even when you really think about what the positions of the Godric soldiers, the ones from the capital, are at, or where they're at, they're just holding strategic choke points, and that's it. They're really not the other castles they had. Obviously, you had the one Kenneth Heights fort that got taken over by the Blood Commander Godric Knight. The one that's serving Moog now, which is crazy to imply that one of the Godric soldiers, commanders, I guess when you really think about it, betrayed him and served Moog, which is insane. And then the other one, where was that companion, or not companion, that NPC's name? Dang, the one in the Weeping Palencia. I forgot what that fort is in that castle. Castle Morn, I think it's called Castle Morn. Yeah, Castle Morn's been overrun by demi-humans, so Godric's power is not what it once used to be. So And even when it was the height of his prime power, I'm pretty sure it was nothing too crazy. Not like how Radon was basically, I'm pretty sure Radon was holding all of Caelid, and then, it got Melania and Mikola having the whole Hallet tree, which is not as big as everything else, but it's just as powerful or even stronger. So it really just goes to show where everything has fallen to. And it just goes to show that don't cling to titles and just try to grow your value and evolve. And obviously everything is supposed to come down eventually, but you never want to come down like how Godrick does it. So remember that he is just simply bitter, and he's chasing power, and you never want to be like that. You always want to be worthy of the power you gain, and also to remember when it comes to power that you have to humble and lower yourself in terms of anything when it comes to leadership or actually anything else in terms of business. That you have to lower yourself and humble yourself in order to attain power. Well, let's talk about the huge next category, which is not the next, like, we're done with the whole mindset thing, but is how to break this pattern of the mindset when it comes to Godrick, and especially when it comes to his mindset, which is just to be more self-aware of yourself and do not fall into that trap. And if you are in that trap, self-awareness can help. And when I mean by trap, I mean family legacy. He falls into that trap, but family legacy doesn't amount to all the pain he has inflicted on other people. So just goes to show that, yeah, you have to ask yourself, like, am I doing this to grow or to hide my fear, hide my anger, hide my lack of power, to hide, the things I've done, my closets, like the things in my closets, that I don't want no one to know about. Just remember, self-awareness can help you prevail in many different categories, and this is one of the one, especially when it comes to cowardice. So remember that. Nothing against feedback. Surround your people who tell you the truth and that actually care for you. As I said before, Godrick has no one around him, and that's the biggest weakness possible. Melania and Mikola had each other, also the Hallet tree. Obviously, Hallet tree was not connected as before, and Mikola has this problem too, but Mikola's a little different. Mikola's a lot more strategic, and he had Radon, and I believe Radon actually did want to become the Lord, so Mikola's a lot different. But even when you think about other people, a great example would be Rani. Rani has Blythe and E.G. and you with the Tarnish, and even Celivis, but we don't talk about Celivis. Celivis is hot dog water and Pedia and all that lore theory stuff. But, even when you think about Rani, like, there's a bunch of things about Rani, and even I've been learning more about Rani lately, that Rani and Melania, what the hell? Rani and Melina were actually one person entirely, split personalities, Empyrean status, how they have those whole split personalities type thing. The good example for Melania is Millicent, and then Saint Trina and Mikola, and then when it comes to Marika is Radagon. So really interesting to think about. That's just a separate theory entirely that I have learned from somebody, a smaller YouTuber. I forgot his name, but he made a very good lore video on that. But another thing to break the whole Godrick pattern, to like not fall into what he did, is to let go of your ego. He's very egotistical, so don't hold on to ego. Ego, yeah. I'm saying like the bird ego, but being egotistical is like one of the like worst things you can do for your whole life, and have the worst traits you can have for your whole life. It just really does ruin things. Now, being egotistical about certain things, like prideful about certain things, is all right. You have to play your cards very carefully, because at the end of the day, we're humans, so we're gonna have some sort of pride, but you have to play your cards very carefully. And when I mean very carefully, you have to play them very carefully. But last thing I have here for the break the mindset is to understand that mastery and actually being skillful at something, this really does break this mode. It breaks this mode. If he was just more passionate about his craft, if he just actually learned how to become stronger without graphing, Godrick would be a completely different person. And just as simple as that. That also applies to real life in many different forms. A lot of people go for the shortcut. You never want to go for the shortcut, and most of the time the shortcut is a false facade, it's a fugazi, it's a selling the dream, like how I said with those alpha males and those fake gurus that are selling the dream to you. Like, I just can't get past that. People will always take the shortcut, and Godrick took the shortcut, and then guess what he did? You fall into that whole insecure thought of the fugazi, the fake dream, and entirely lost in many different forms. And it doesn't matter how you look at it, reputation, who he was, and everything like that. He simply lost. And now we're going to talk about how Godrick connects to business, and these are very loose claims because Godrick's business is, lack for a better word, not there. No connections and traits, but we do have bad leadership traits, which is what we're going to talk about. It's clear to me that his leadership is very divided. When I mean divided, it's like, let's think about his soldiers. All his soldiers from the capital, not a single one inside the castle. We have ones in front of the castle, and then we have ones scattered between the lands between. But you would think that his first original company of battalion, knights, whatever you want to call them, his army basically, would be in his castle, his garrison. But no, not one. We don't see no commander. We don't see anything like that. All we get is a giant in front of his boss door, and we get, like, you know, these tough banished knights. But sure, we get a crucible knight, which is interesting. But the crucible knight is like the most dog water position ever. So it's like, I'm pretty sure Godrick doesn't even know that crucible knight is there. I don't even know why that crucible knight is there in the first place. Maybe he's there to be hired, but maybe he is because of the golden lineage. But that crucible knight is in the most weird position ever, and he's strong too. Especially early on if you try to fight him. So it's just like, wow, like I don't really know. He's no sense of leadership and no sense of everything. And even, let's think about the Crucible Knight once again. Let's think about the position the Crucible Knight is. It was such poor leadership and commanding by Godrick, if he actually knew that Crucible Knight was there, to put that Crucible Knight in the most dog-water position ever. That just goes for business, life, college, doesn't matter. Strategic thinking as well. It's like, what made him think that these Crucible Knights, very strong and all, are just put in these random positions? But my theory when it comes to the Crucible Knights is that actually the Crucible Knights actually try to fight them, try to kill Godrick or some way, some form. Because let's think about it. Outside the Stormvale Castle, they have the Everjail or the Evergall, whatever you were going to call them, the prisons for the spirits or something like that. I'm not really too sure. But the basically the Evergalls. There's a Crucible Knight in that Evergall, and then you have the other Crucible Knight that's in the general area in the most random position ever. So it just goes to show that, like, I'm pretty sure they were trying to fight them. I'm not really too sure though. Maybe it's just me talking. But yeah, when you really think about his soldiers' position and stuff like that, really bad leadership decisions, and it just goes to show the mistrust and the insecurity that comes from his own army. His own army is still loyal because, you know, the Golden Order and the Golden Lineage, but it really just goes to show that Godrick has, when he comes to leadership towards his army, he just really threw them out like trash. He threw out the piece of wrapper and it's like, whoop, yep. But another thing when it comes to business is that Godrick is just, lack for better words, has the traits of like a person you don't want to follow. So when it comes to all these things, let's think about your own boss, for example, and you're very, like, you can do this through analyzing somebody and actually understanding the actions they do. Look at the actions they do, and if they follow similar pattern to Godrick, oh, you're in a real wrong position, especially when it comes to your boss or anything like that. Of course, sometimes you gotta bite the bullet and be like, you know, I need the job for the check or whatever. 100% fine. Just be more strategic about your actions and realize your boss is, well, falls on the same line of Godrick. So that's just not a good correlation or comparison ever. So remember that, remember that, remember that. Another thing is that you always have a chance to grow and to evolve past the reputation you gain. So even if you do fall into this category or anything like that, there always be some sense of redemption. So remember that redemption is always will be offered to you, especially under the Lord Jesus Christ. So just remember that. What's some other things I could talk about is that he fakes confidence. Godrick fakes confidence, and he really doesn't really have a purpose. What is Godrick trying to do? He's trying to graft himself for more power, but what he's going to do after that? He barely even has an army. So even if he was going to take over more territory, he have no army. And even the areas around him, he could take it over when you really think about it. But I don't know, he could go up to Lurinia. Lurinia's in chaos, so I'm pretty sure he can move forces up there easily too, and he can go down south to Weeping Palencia and control that area too. He supposedly controlled it through Castle Morn, but Castle Morn's not what it used to be. And even like the people that are holding the bridge, it's interesting to really think about, because the bridge to Castle Morn is being blocked off by Godrick soldiers. But if the Godrick, like, there's dead bodies on that path, and there's dead bodies near that bridge that are Godrick soldiers. So I'm not really sure what the implications are there, but I'm pretty sure if you're just Godrick soldier, especially that guy in that ballista, he's just kind of sitting here, and then he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna guard this bridge. And then if you were to look behind him, just for a little bit, just look behind him, you'll see Godrick soldiers dead on the floor, and the castle's commander, I forgot his name, Edgar, Castle's commander Edgar, daughter, which is, I forgot her name, Enya? No, not Enya. Irina? I think Irina is her daughter. But yeah, he would just see a blind girl behind him and a bunch of freaking dead bodies. It's like, wow, I really wonder what happened over there. Like, bro, why wouldn't you just go check there? But it's very suspicious, you know. So I don't know what the implications are there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they rebelled against Godric as well, just like that Blood Commander at the Kenneth Heights fort. So it just really shows that Godric doesn't have the trust of his men or anything no more, and it makes sense. Look at all the traits and the mindset he produces. It just really goes to show that he's a coward in many ways possible, and you know, when it comes to business, you don't need that in business or leadership or anything like that. So beware, beware, beware when it comes to Godric. But let's talk about some final thoughts. Do I think Godric is a villain? Yes. He freaking grafted everybody. He even grafted what's her name? The spirit tuning girl. Oh, I forgot her name. Yeah, I forgot her name, but the spirit tuning girl, the one you meet at the Stormvale Shack, and the one that goes to the Round Table Hole and you do spirit tuning with her. But yeah, Rodrigo. Yeah, she killed her like whole, like, I don't know what it was actually, but she killed her whole like army, not army, but it was like more like her peoples. Killed her peoples. That's what I'm gonna call it. Killed her peoples. Killed all the people that were traveling with her, travel companions and stuff like that. It's crazy when you really think about it. He's fake confidence. He faked confidence. He was a coward. He skipped the capital. All that stuff. Very, very self-explanatory. Do not follow in his footsteps. It's as simple as that. But if I were to tell you like some bonus ideas, like when it comes to Godric, is that Godric is an interesting character. Like, he really is. I was talking about this a little earlier. This is beyond the point of like, hey, we're talking about real life now, or you know, how it connects. We're beyond that. That's done. The main thing you want to look at when it comes to Godric is his mindset, and that's really it. I made some connections to business, I made some connections to anything else, but Godric is just mainly his mindset is what you want to look at, because everything else is just like trash, whatever, like how they described him in Elden Ring. So, but some bonus ideas is that Godric's lineage might not be what it is, and there's a bunch of things that when it comes to Godric that it really just divides the idea, such as Godric. Godric is also a good example. Like, Godric and Godric are basically the same model and everything like that, but I don't know what the implications are there. Because you might think it's just cheap design, but it could be more. Maybe it is cheap design, but maybe it could be more. You never know. I wouldn't put it past them. But it's not our first idea of like, hey, somebody has transported their spirit. Maybe Godric is actually Godric transported his spirit out of the Evergel or something like that, and that's just a body of a husk, you know. Like in Dark Souls 2, there's this guy who was like a mercenary warrior, and he got his head chopped off, and he's now in that freaking that fog swamp area, whatever it may be. I forgot what it was called, but yeah, he's like, he has his body walking around with these two axes from Dark Souls 2. Another example in Elden Ring was actually Selen. Selen is able to physically like put projections out of herself, and you know, the Empyreans are a good example. Godric and Godfrey are actually from that lineage of Godfrey and Godwin, so I wouldn't be surprised if they have some type of ability to project himself or something like that. So who knows? We just don't have enough information, but it's interesting to think about. My theory when it comes to Godric is that Godric is actually Godfrey. There it is. Now my lines of thinking is kind of like falls into the whole Selen and the whole Empyrean thing, but she's not Empyrean, but he has divinity blood in him. But who knows? Maybe it is Godric though, and maybe it's just cheap design by the little few cracks in Elden Ring. But yeah, that's just it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm all blinged out. I'm going crazy today. I actually was gonna wear nothing, but you know, I had to go jewelry shopping today. I'm pretty cool. This is what I'm gonna take. Obviously not with the shirt. I'm probably gonna change the shirt out, change the whole outfit. I'm just trying to be relaxed, or maybe I'll put a hoodie over and stuff like that. Who knows? But I'm actually going jewelry shopping today, and that's why I'm looking like this. I'm recording a video for my friend's YouTube channel, so it's a whole vlog thing, and he wants me to come blinged out. He also is going to be blinged out. He runs a whole business, a management business, so it's really cool. Maybe I'll get him on for one of these vlog videos and get a whole interview. I wouldn't be surprised if he would like the idea, but you know, all these things are happening today. I'm gonna have a great time. I hope you guys have a great time today. If you guys are a great night, good good morning, great night, whatever it may be for you guys. And I hope you guys had an amazing day or amazing night. God bless, and thank you guys for the support. And I hope you guys have a fantastic time in this Elden Ring lessons video. Let's talk about this now. Godrick's lineage is really strong. That's why Godrick is the way he is. But who is Godrick's lineage? What really makes Godrick act like this? Why does he always talk about the lands raised of gold and all these lion imagery and everywhere and all these axe imagery everywhere? You want to learn that? Watch this video here about Godfrey.